Welcome, everybody, to episode 58, live from my drum room. It's great to be here today on a Monday afternoon. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm a couple of minutes behind my rescheduled time, but I'm going to start here, jump right in. I want to thank you all for tuning in last week to my show with Kenny Jones. That was a lot of fun. If you happen to miss that, please check out my YouTube channel, Live from My Drum Room. And you can watch it on YouTube. You can also download the podcast. In fact, I recommend doing both and subscribing as well to my YouTube channel and to my podcast. So thank you for doing that. Also want to make a couple of quick thank yous to some folks. I've been meaning to do this before some of these shows, and that's why I wanted to start a little early today, was to just thank some friends that I know from working in the business all these years that have been a big help to me personally with my playing situation and also with the show. First of all, my friend Ryan Smith at Shure Microphones and all the people at Shure Microphones for this beautiful handy dandy Shure MV7 spectacular microphone, as well as you can see there's a Beta 52 on my bass drum, that Premier bass drum. I've got a bunch of Shure microphones that I love. So I want to thank Ryan and everybody at Shure. I just recently got this Gibraltar skinny drum throne you heard me talk about a few weeks ago. And I actually have a couple of these. This one I keep here in my drum room, and I use one live on my gigs. It's, for gigging. And just to, I don't know if you could see it when I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you could get a real good look at it, but you can see it's pretty lightweight, but it's durable as can be, and it's really comfortable. It has a gel seat cushion, very comfortable and firm. And as I say, the best thing about this seat, though, is it's super durable and strong, but light. It doesn't take up half my trap case, and it doesn't, weigh an extra 40 pounds. So anyway, I want to thank the guys at Gibraltar. Lots of good folks there. They also sent me a part to fix my old Gibraltar throne that I'm sitting on right now that was broken. So thanks for that. Of course, Chris Hart at Remo, the best drum heads, my friends at Gretsch, DW, Zildjian and Fickfirth, drumsticks. So thanks to all you guys. And I also want to thank you all that have subscribed to my podcast. I found out this past week that somehow it's been rated as number 5 in the top 20 drum podcasts, which I found hard to believe, almost impossible. But it was on the internet, so it must be true, because you'd never find anything that's not true on the internet. So anyway, in all seriousness, that was surprising and a pleasant surprise. So thanks to everybody who continues to subscribe and download all my podcasts. That's exciting. That's a new thing for me, only a couple of months, so it's starting to happen. All right, let's see. What else? What else can I tell you? I think I've maybe covered everything I needed to talk about right now. One more thing too. I do want to thank Billy Amendola and David Hakeem and the folks at Modern Drummer Magazine. They were kind enough to include me in the tribute to Charlie Watts. It's online. It's digitally available right now, and I think the magazines are being mailed out right now. But of course, Modern Drummer is the longest running drum magazine. It's the Bible as far as I'm concerned, and it was an honor to be included in there with guys like Jim Keltner and John Densmore and a whole bunch of legendary drummers that knew Charlie as well. And so thank you, Modern Drummer, for including my little bit about Charlie in the tribute. So it's an honor to be in there. So thanks for that. And to all you folks, I hope you'll check it out. They did a beautiful job honoring a great man. So, and the man I'm about to bring out in just a minute, you might remember I had on a couple of weeks ago during one of the tributes to Charlie. And that is, of course, Shawn Pelton, longtime drummer for Saturday Night Live and about 1 million other sessions. I mean, it's staggering the amount of work he's done. So, so with that, I think I've I've covered it all. Again, thank you all for joining. Got a great looking room so far. It's great. So yeah, I'm going to bring out Shawn. Without further delay, please welcome my good friend and longtime friend, Shawn Pelton.
Hey, John, how's it going, man?
It's great, brother. It's going great. Man, it's great to see you. It's so great to see you.
Man, thanks so much for having me. An honor to be here. And yeah, we go kind of way back now as the moons have passed and stuff.
Well, you know, I'm glad you said that, because that was like one of the first things I was going to talk about. I just, you know, for everybody watching this live right now that might not know this, that we met, by my recollection, we met the summer of 1989. Does that sound right? You were on tour with John Eddie.
That's right. That's right. Wow.
Yep.
Good memory. Yeah.
And you were living in New York, and you were, well, Kenny Aronoff introduced us. Kenny was playing with Jefferson Airplane at Great Woods, just outside of Boston. And he introduced me to his friend. And you were kind of like a student or a former student of Kenny's, or you studied with him?
Yeah. Yeah. I was so lucky to have been able to study with Kenny for a while there in Bloomington. You know, went to school in Bloomington, and that's where, of course, Mellencamp was based.
Yeah.
So that was a real lucky opportunity to be around him at that time, man. Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the beginning of I know we stayed in touch after that. You know, I gave you my card, and you either sent me a cassette of John Eddie, or maybe you gave it to me that night. But I just remember you were like already working and doing a lot of stuff in New York. In fact, I found this photo. I think I sent this to you years ago, but I'm going to just hang on a second, Shawn. I told you I'm new at this high tech stuff, but this was 1990. Do you remember this at Sam Ash?
I do remember, man. Oh my God, that's incredible. Wow, Marco and everybody. That's the drum store up on 48th Street.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that's really going back. I love it.
I know, man. I know you were hanging with us. We were we were there in town for the Zildjian Day that we were doing at the Ritz or someplace in New York, I think. And Tristan Bowden is there, and Kenny Aronoff, and Marco, of course, is running Sam Ash, and Mike Morse, who's the Zildjian West Coast guy.
Yeah.
And you came and hung. I think we were drinking grappa and getting into all kinds of trouble.
Yeah. Man, that was a great hang. It was a great hang, man.
It was a great hang. So anyway, I mean, that was 31 years ago. Crazy. And then I, you know, and then I, like a year later, 1992, 30 years ago, basically, you get the gig, you know, on Saturday night, playing for Saturday Night Live, and 30 years, man.
Yeah. I know it's, you know, I feel so fortunate, as we all know, like in this business, any kind of steady gig or longevity situation is so hard to come by. And man, I count my blessings every time I walk into that studio, you know, on Saturday. And it's been an amazing ride. I couldn't be luckier, you know, just,
well,
you very thankful, you know, very thankful.
You know, when we were on a couple of weeks ago, we had the whole group of guys. You know, Mickey Curry was saying how great you sound, how great the band sounds, and you know, we were honoring Charlie that day. But I wanted to mention that again, that, and Mickey and I were talking about that offline too, how you're just killing it. There have been so many guys that have sat in that seat, you know, obviously Steve Jordan and Matt Chamberlain and Chris Parker and yourself, of course. But you've like, that band is just, it's just like so well oiled now, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's such what an incredible chair that, I mean, the people that have played, like you said, Steve Jordan, and then Steve Ferroni did it for a while as well. Yeah. And Buddy Williams.
And, yeah.
you know, in the beginning, I think there were some cats would come in and out, like I think Gadd and different people, Weckel, you know, came in and sub different times, you know, um, and it's just an incredible group of musicians, you know, because it's sort of cats that are based in New York and that were sort of working in the studios and the tradition of that. And when I first started in '92, GE was running the band and kind of got the gig through an audition with Matt. You know, Matt Chamberlain had done it for years. Obviously, such a great musician, and decided to leave after a year. And so they had some auditions. I knew the bass player that was doing it, and we had an audition over at SIR on 25th Street here in New York. And man, it was a wild audition. It was sort of just show up, and G started playing, and then Paul, the bass player, Paul Solo was there. It was just the three of us, and G just started playing, and you just, you know, it was swim or drown, you know. So just, you know, get down and whatever was happening. I mean, it was nothing like, hey, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. He would just start playing, and you just had to get down, you know. And I felt the audition I felt went really great because I'd been doing a lot of gigs that were sort of in that wheelhouse, like a lot of blues gigs and then the rock thing. And I think G wanted somebody that was sort of hit kind of big, but it was also kind of simple and straight ahead in a feel was a priority, you know. And then also someone that maybe had a wide range that could cover a lot of bases, you know, and play brushes, and you know, if you had to swing a big band types chart, you know. And so kind of a broad range, which was really fortunate how I came up then, and all the different things I was exposed to really seemed to be a plus in that way, you know, at that point, you know. And now, you know, Lenny, there was a change made about 3 or 4 years into that, and Lenny Pickett started running the band. And, you know, just the musicianship on the band is, you know, Lenny from Tower of Power, Lenny Pickett, and you know, all this, he's played with so many incredible drummers, you know, like the Garibaldi, they used to be roommates, you know. And he has this incredible stories about hanging with David and being on the road, and David practicing, maybe had a practice pad that was the size of a quarter, you know, on his, for, you know, precision and control type stuff. And so incredibly inspiring and really great band leader, and just incredible musician. And James Genius plays bass, he tours with Herbie now and has played with everybody, the Brecker Brothers, and on and on and on. And a lot of great jazz players in the horn section, like Steve Toure is trombonist. And you know, these guys, like, you know, Steve, he's won the downbeat pole with trombone for years after years, and played with Blakey, you know, and just has incredibly inspiring Art Blakey stories. You know, he can sit down and play a Blakey shuffle on the drums and talk about it. And you know, his stories about being around Elvin and all this stuff. It's just Ron Blake plays Barry, and he played with Roy Haynes, you know. And then Alex Foster runs the Mingus big band, and Leon Pendarvis, the keyboard player, like came up with that generation, like Steve Gadd and all those guys. And he's actually been on the band the longest, I think, since the early '80s. So some of those horn players have been there since the mid '80s, you know. And so, you know, wow, just it really inspiring to go in and hit with those cats, you know.
It's got to be, it's got to be. And just, I mean, the level of everybody on the bandstand is, it's got to be like something that just makes you just want to play, just show up and work and do the best work you can do.
It really is like that. And like I said, the way Lenny runs the band is really, it's really cool how he does it, you know. It's almost like a great baseball team manager or something like that, on a level where you have, you know, great musicians, and then the way he kind of can steer it. And but man, it is a thing where that the band hits, like when we show up at 11 in the morning, it's like, I think because Lenny they used to rehearse a lot with Tower of Power, so he's used to like, okay, you know, the clock starts at 11, we're going to do this, and you know, it's full out. No, it's not any, you know, coasting. So it's a thrill, absolutely.
So on show days, you guys rehearse at 11.
Yeah, and it's wild with this COVID thing, because traditionally we've always started at 11 a.m., but now we had to show up like an hour and a half early and go through the whole rapid test thing, and everybody has to go through it and
Oh,
get
yeah.
checked, and so the day starts even earlier. Like I had to get there at 9:30, and then you're sort of there, and there's breaks and there's different things, but you're sort of on call, and then we go live at 11:30 at night, and we're done by 1 a.m. So it's kind of a long day,
Yeah. Yeah.
said and done. Yeah.
Man, that's if we can back up for 1 second, Shawn, I think people, by the way, Jeremy Driesen says hello to you.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeremy's
Jeremy.
buddy. I hang out in the vineyard with Jeremy. Talking about like the audition, I'd just be curious because I never heard the story about how you auditioned. Like when you said GE, it was just sort of like a jam session. And were there a bunch of guys that was a sort of cattle call in New York, like a bunch of guys auditioning for it, or?
I think it was maybe, I don't think it was more than 5.
Okay.
And, so it wasn't a huge call at that point. And, he had been playing with Bob Dylan at that point. But, he had played with a lot of people. He was with Hall & Oates, and she had done a lot of wide range of stuff. And, I think the way Bob does things live, and then I had the chance to get to record with him a couple of times. It's so interesting. Like it just happens, and you have to sort of be present to fall in with what's happening, And so even when I had got the gig, we'd be live on air sometimes, and G would be on camera and just start something. And he would do this with his ear. He'd look back at me and do this to his ear. And that meant that he's just going to do some shit. You better fall in. And then he would give the horn players a key, and, but, it was exciting. It was a crazy way to go, and I think he kind of got that type of aesthetic sort of from hanging out with Bob Dylan's thing for a while, because he tells stories about the guitarist. He said sometimes if you see photos of Bob live, like the guitar players sometimes are at a 90-degree angle so they can see Bob's left hand to see what key maybe he's going to be in and stuff like that. So, without any discussion of, okay, we're doing Masters of War in this, it was sort of just he would start, So anyway, I think that he brought some of that to the thing, and the audition was definitely like that. I mean, there were some charts too to like make sure that you could read, and there were some charts that covered like some brush stuff, and then like maybe like kind of a Count Basie thing, but a lot of it was really coming out of like big, electric guitar blues, and then like the Stax tradition, like even when G was running the band, like Lenny tenors playing, and the sound of the band since the beginning is kind of coming out of a Junior Walker, Motown, retro, 60s, 70s funk thing. And so there was a lot of stuff in that vein too. And, but my head was, I felt just lucky because I had been playing gigs that were sort of blues based, and it was all about feel, and, and it wasn't a lot of craziness or busyness going on. And I think he liked that. That's kind of what he wanted in the band.
Yeah, you got an unbelievable feel. The show the other night, the whole season has been great. We've been talking about this, and so everybody watching at home knows been trying to get this together for a while, and you've just been so busy. And so I so appreciate you doing this today, and especially after having a show the other night, and the Dionne Warwick portion of the show the other night where she came on, and you guys played just a little bit of What the World Needs Now, kind of a little outro to it. And I was just, of course, as a drummer, I'm listening to you, I'm like totally dialed into you, and I'm just like, man, what a motherfucking feel, what a great,
Well, I mean, I appreciate that so much, and I'm just all in on that part of the drum thing. Like I'm so intrigued and drawn to what is happening when somebody sits down behind a kit that can transcend the thing and just feel magical, like how is this happening? And, what is going on, and like, every time I see Bernard Purdy play, I feel that, and it's just so inspiring. And and all the great field players, you know, that I look up to. I mean, the list is so huge, and they're all my heroes, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's Purdy. You know, I got a chance to play with Purdy together on his 65th birthday party, and you know, it was just a blast being around him and see him play. And every time he plays in New York that I can go, I just sit there and try to soak it up, you know. And it's just magic. It's just magic.
Yeah.
You know? But I just I just love that tradition of drumming, that when somebody sits behind the set and it makes you want to move or dance or shake your ass and get up, you know.
Yeah.
And it's
And
everything.
those, yeah. And it's obvious to me that, you know, the guys that inspired you, you know, when you were starting out as a drummer, like you were listening to, you know, you were listening to, I'm guessing, like Bernard and Levon Helm and these guys with all that, just, you know, there's a picture of you and Roger Hawkins too that I'll share. I mean, like all that feel just for days.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
And
well, you know, this Roger thing, we were playing at the 55 bar. This must have been in the early 2000s, I think, and he was down. And man, to just to meet him, and I got his signature on a cymbal and stuff. And you know, and then a lot of that music we do at the show is Roger on some of that stuff, or, you know, very influenced by Muscle Shoals and what that was all about. And then I was just I'm on this new Aretha movie, you know, which was a deep dive into that music that Roger did. It sort of focuses on that period at Muscle Shoals when she went down there. And, you know, it was such an honor to sort of play that music and try to give service to it. And
oh yeah.
And
Man,
you mentioned Levon. You know, he had this whole scene up in Woodstock, the Midnight Ramble Band.
Yeah.
And so many of us, you know, so he was so open, and there were so many people that got to do it. And I tell you, that was like a church being around him, and the joy that he has, and he's so inclusive and just positive, and he just loved music, and man, that feel and the sound. And so to get to play beside him too, and then there'd be times where he'd go out and play the mandolin, and then you could, you know, play behind him and stuff. So this shot here is from his funeral.
Yeah.
And it was like a celebration after he was buried. And a lot of drummers there. Steve Jordan's on the left behind Larry Campbell.
Yeah.
And so just that was up in Woodstock after his funeral, and it was really a great moment, you know, with everybody just celebrating his life. And, you know, wow, what an inspiration, you know, so soulful. Yeah. And, you know, my family's from Arkansas, so it was just so cool to be around, you know, have similar roots and feel all that, you know.
Yeah. That's, yeah. And you can hear it. It just seeps through your playing to me. You know, I hear all that, like that rootsy feel, groovy music. But I remember when you played the Modern Drummer Festival in 2011, was it 10 years ago?
Yeah, or 10, or, you know, there was, I guess, you know, lucky enough they asked it 2 times. I think it's 2003 and then in 2010.
That's right. 2010. Yeah. Okay, that's right. I remember that first time. I was thinking the last time you played, this is going to sound crazy, but I just remember talking to you about this afterward too, because there were a couple of, I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember the exact songs, but there were a couple of tunes where, because it was Modern Drummer, it was the drum festival, where you kind of took a little solo, or you really sort of got to blow a little bit, which we don't hear you do a lot on the show, you know. And most of the records you play on are, you know, they're not records where you're going to come in and, you know, and chops out, you know, but man, I remember sitting there listening to these single stroke rolls that were like insane. Like, and I remember saying, Shawn, man, you got incredible hands, you know, chops. You're like, oh man, well, you know, you're so humble about it. You were like, yeah, they were like, you know.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I was a huge Tony Williams fan. coming up, and I went when I went to school, I sort of went to do the jazz route,
Yeah.
in Bloomington there. And so, I love all the jazz icons. And Tony, was just life changing for so many of us, and that single stroke roll thing he does. And then what's wild is when, see if I had a stick, but his grip when he started holding kind of back here, and it was all single stroke orientated, and he got this huge sound, kind of when he started playing on the bigger drums from 70 onward stuff. And anyway, so that was just like, I started to realize that is kind of, you can get a big rock sound with that kind of approach too, and then being around Kenny, because he's such a physical presence and, behind the drums. And, when Kenny was first starting with Mellencamp, and before he became such an amazing, icon recording wise, it was so amazing to be around him and see him work on his sound and his big sound, getting a big sound and projecting to wanting to project to the back of like Madison Square Garden, and like that kind of presence at that time. And, in the 80s was such a trip because the snare drum was almost the biggest thing in the mix, like, oh, in the USA.
Yeah.
But where I'm headed is Tony, just got that huge ass sound with those single strokes, and his grip was sort of very, actually I have a picture of Blakey. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
It's sort of this is like art, but like this left hand grip is really kind of like, just very, it's not finger orientated. It's like, big.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was he was an influence in that way.
Yeah.
Just a big sound.
And I, and that's a great way to describe it too, because you got so much power. I remember like it was, and that's what I think of with Tony is like, you've got all this, like, Tony had all that finesse, but he had all that power too, like Billy Cobham with that, just like really muscular kind of playing when he needed to pull that out, it was.
Well, and I think you just nailed it about when you need to pull that out. Like, it was so fascinating making the transition. Like when I moved to New York, and if you're used to playing bigger spaces, or if you're on a tour with like a shed outdoor thing and stuff like that, like the physicality of that or what might work there, like, making that transition to play smaller rooms in New York, like something like the 55 bar or something like that, and having the range to make it happen at so many different dynamic levels. It's a huge skill that's important if you want to work a lot in a lot of different contexts, because playing big like that isn't going to work everywhere. And by the same token, a light, soft touch that might be appropriate in a smaller room, some people may want a bigger presence from the, but so it's just,
Do you find that principle like during sessions as well? Like, you go in to do a record and you might, I would never think you're playing too big for a recording, but maybe they want you to play a little bigger, or.
No, that's a great question. And, that can go a million different ways. It's so wild how records can come together in so many different ways. And man, there are times where I think they want to feel a lot of energy and bigness from somebody, even if it maybe doesn't have to happen,
Yeah.
And then 180 degrees from that, like they might really be completely bummed out with someone big. And so to sort of read that radar wise and have a sensibility about that is, it has so much to do with working consistently, is trying to read the tea leaf, about what's needed and what do they want. And, if you hear someone talking and they feel like they need more energy and they equate that with more physical presence, or that's not what they want. They want more energy, but like, subtle, or it goes so many different ways. And then the other thing that's interesting about too, like in New York, is that let me see if I had I sometimes I put these little sticks together that are rods with like little broomsticks. So like on one side I can have kind of a tick tick, and on the other side it's a little fatter and warmer. But where I'm headed is, and if you muffle the drums down, you can kind of play with more physical presence, and but maybe it's not louder, you know.
I got you.
And
Yeah.
that's interesting too, like the whole dance of that. And you know, with drums, like there's situations where they really want someone to come in and take charge, a drummer that will take charge. And there's other times where they don't want that at all. They want the person that can come in and fit within what's happening, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's such a wide range that you have to be sensitive to, you know.
But like you just said, I mean, that's where your expertise comes in, to be able to kind of read the room and go, I need to just kind of be a fly on the wall and just kind of do what the producer or the artist is asking me to do. Or as you say, kind of step up and go, well, maybe I need to play it more like this. Maybe this is what you're looking for. Right. I mean, it kind of.
Yeah. It's so interesting, man, about, you know, that line of being just right, and but then too much can be a distraction, and then being a wallflower can be exactly what they don't want, or maybe it is what they want. It's just so wild. I mean, these gigs, like I've done it for a lot of years, the Songwriters Hall of Fame, which is this, you know, amazing gig where it's kind of an industry event for the publishing and songwriting community, but they bring all the great artists in, like, you know, Stevie Wonder and McCartney's done it. So, you know, like one year we were playing with Aerosmith, and it was great, but like the idea was that I think it was Sweet Emotion or something like that. And, you know, you've got like 5 seconds to make an impression to Steven Tyler and Joe Perry that you've got your shit together and it's going to feel great, and that you're going to blow the roof off the place, in, you know, either by rocking or by being, or whatever it takes, you know, but that you've got your shit together. It's so interesting with drums. Like when something's not right or doesn't feel right, like often it lands in the drummer's lap, you know, like, and so having sort of the strength to deal with that and be sort of prepared, you know, like situations like that, like if you're sent the recording from the original recording, like, is that how they're doing it now? Or they're doing it a lot faster, or just a little faster, or actually slower, or they're doing an acoustic version, or, you know, with like a broke down kit, or like, there's so many things happening. And with like YouTube, you know, there's like a way to sort of stay on top of, or at least when you show up in those kind of high pressure situations, you know, like that maybe you've had a chance to check out what's out there, you know, because you never know which way it will land, you know. And I think Alan Dawson told me this. I was lucky enough to get to hang with him for a couple summers. You know, you only have, what is the phrase? Only have one chance to make a first impression, or, you know, something like that. And with drums, you know, it's like, it's really like that, man. If you're an artist and you step into a house band situation, and if the drums aren't right, or it doesn't feel right, I mean, it can be like, you know.
Yeah. And I got to think you're probably being humble about this, because I would bet that you have so much, like you've been able to develop an instinct where you can read it. I'm willing to bet you can read it pretty quickly, like when you go in and just pick up some vibes on things that, you know, like you say, it helps when you get a recording in advance and you know if they're playing it like the record, or they're playing it a little faster or slower. But I'm guessing that you work as much as you do because you can kind of go in like Hal Blaine used to do, and kind of, you know, like read the room and go, okay, I know this is where they're going with this. And, you know, it's hard to explain. Yeah.
No, you're right. I think there is that kind of awareness and that kind of skill. And if you have that kind of sensitivity, you can work a lot, you know, or, you know, you'll be in situations where it can lead to more work. But then I think it's also some pre-rolls to that too. Like, you know, I don't ever show up to the Songwriters Hall of Fame unless I probably put in a lot of time checking out what's happening with, like, you know, like it's funny, we did I think it was My Sharia Moore with Stevie Wonder or something one year, and he shows up, and we were sent a version that was them doing it live, which I think was a little more pumped up and more muscular and kind of modern, you know. And so that's what we were kind of given. And I had checked out the other versions and stuff. And he goes, so when we first played it, we played it like what we were given, you know, because that's what we do. And then he goes, drummer. He goes, what's your name? I said, Shawn. He goes, hey, Shawn. So he goes, I want you to do this. Pick up a brush with your right hand and a stick with your left hand. And then I want you to play kind of a bossa nova there or something. And he sang the drums, you know, it was amazing, but it was back to sort of what the original recording I think was more about. I hope I have this song title right and stuff. But, you know, that's like an example of a story where, you know, if I had never checked out the original recording or something like that, you know, I would have been, or if I didn't have a pair of brushes next to you know, or something.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Imagine if you said to Stevie Wonder, "Oh man, I don't have any brushes."
Right.
No. Well, that's you know, it's all that preparation that we were talking about. How you know and you said earlier. I want to jump backwards just because earlier you were talking about like the audition process with the SNL band and how important reading was to that gig. So, and I was going to ask that question, like, because I know you chart out a lot. I can see that you're, you know, I've seen pictures of your kit and how you know, chart stuff out. And I didn't know if you do that yourself or that's really part of the whole process there though, isn't it? Like
it is, yeah, because you know, when you're freelancing, like often, you know, like say the Songwriters Hall of Fame thing, or once I had sub for Anton for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you know, now this situation, so that's like an overhead shot of the kid at SNL, and on the left there's like a book, Saturday Night Live drum book, and you know, the music at SNL is pretty specific because it's a 5-piece horn section and everything is written out and copied out. And you know, like, so for like Tower of Power songs, for instance, it's pretty involved, and you know, every 16th note is being articulated and stuff.
Yeah.
But often what I do is I'll go through and carve a chart up so that I don't have to be stuck in the paper. And the first thing I try to get to is like, what's the form of the song?
Yeah.
And, you know, intro, verse, chorus, bridge, you know, solo section. And man, I use colored markers and all sorts of different things to make it as easy as possible for me to get past the chart and into just getting down and making this happen, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's funny, you know, I've subbed with, as far as these television situations, like over at Letterman, they kind of had some charts, but they didn't have an official drum book, you know, and Anton often made, you know, quick notes and was great at that. I remember like spending a lot of time making my own charts for, like, for instance, I think they used to do Dude Looks Like a Lady, the Aerosmith tune was for one example. And, you know, everybody kind of knows Dude Looks Like, and kind of, oh yeah, okay, cool. Well, count it off, I'll play. But you know, it's like, I think the bridge has an odd phrase, and maybe there's a, you know, and there's breaks and different things and signature.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I remember once subbing over there, and Paul goes, and it was it's kind of a hot seat to sub, because, you know, it's such a working band, and Anton's so great, and they've just played together so long that, and when you come into a situation like that, you sort of want to be seamless and you know, make it feel like that they're not having to worry about a third wheel or something. And he goes, man, the opening theme, we've made a slight adjustment and it's one beat shorter. And so, and there's not a chart for it, you know, there's kind of like a horn chart but it wasn't updated. And there's like there's an odd bar in the middle of that theme back in the day. So it was a little bit tricky, you know. And then I said, oh, okay, well, that's cool, but where maybe is the beat not gone, you know? And then he's like, I'm not sure, somewhere in there, but you'll feel it or some shit, you know. And I'm like looking at Will, you know, and but I you know, I was able to figure it out, but I had spent, like, you know, a great deal of time making my own chart for it, you know, and how the phrasing went and sort of the horn figures, because when you showed up there, you weren't really given a drum chart, you know. And then on the Conan band, it was a similar thing there too. Like, the horn section had charts, but the rhythm section really didn't. And you were just sort of, it was up to you to show up to make it happen. And however, you know, one's like my charts are different than how Kenny maybe does his charts. You know, like I have a system that's sort of, it's very form orientated, and then to the right of the form, I'll write down, you know, patterns or signature fills if they need to happen and things like that. And Kenny's thing is a little more literal in a cool way, like you were actually getting a real chart, you know. And but it's kind of like whatever works for, you know, the person. And and it is, though, it's a big part of the process of these things when you get hired to show up, where it's like you've got to knock out 25 tunes and you've got 3 hours to rehearse it, and the artist has 10 minutes with the band, you know. And it's kind of like you can't be asking, oh wait, where's the bridge at, or what, oh, the field change on the bridge, oh that's right, okay, I'll remember, or you know, that kind of shit. You can't,
no, I
you
know.
can't do that and get called back. You won't get called back, you know.
That's great, man. I think that's huge for everybody to know that. And I want to just shout out to a couple of folks watching that. First of all, my friend Chris Anzalone, great drummer here in Boston, who I was studying with for a while last year and still off and on. And so I want to say hi to him, because we've talked about, he was helping me learn to read and reading charts, and talking about exactly what you're talking about, the importance of at least getting like a roadmap to learn the tunes.
Yeah, and the roadmap thing, you know, it is really helpful. And that, I will say that I remember when I was coming up and before I moved to New York, like there was this thing of like, oh, I'll never work in the studio unless I've sort of been, you know, can read the most complicated chart of the North Texas State Jazz Band in Denton, you know. And like there was always sort of this fear of like, and I, you know, there are times when you need to be able to read, no doubt about it. But if you have a way of navigating it and making sense of it, and, you know, I think the most important thing is having a great feel and being musical. And so, you know, I haven't run across heavy situations where like, you know, it's the black page, and if you don't nail the black page, you know, and that happens every week. It's not that intense, but there are a lot of times where drummers are handed things like just head charts or a piano chart, or like things that aren't even official drum charts, and just being able to navigate that and make sense of it, and get a bird's eye view of what the big picture is musically, you know. Those kind of skills are great survival skills, you know. But like if somebody asked me if they needed to read in 15/16 and all sorts of odd times and articulate it on the drum kit, I mean, that would be great, but that, I don't know if that really comes up that much, you know.
That
makes sense.
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. And like, so when you get called to do like a Sheryl Crow record, I'm guessing there's like maybe a demo that they play you. It's probably not a chart that they've given you, but you might make your own chart at that point once you hear the form of the song.
Yeah. So like, I was just working on something today, you know, like my charts are sort of like legal pad. I don't know if it's easy to tell, but all this is just the form. Like, does it say intro and then 8 bars? And so there's form, and then, you know, I do little lines about sections, and maybe I have signature fills I want to do, or, you know, so it's kind of very basic and open to then, like, if somebody says something, I can kind of, and I give myself a couple pages if it's long, you know, and I can write in details if people have feedback of things they want, or if I do something that I love and want to do it again. So right, so like at a Sheryl thing, sometimes they play a demo for you, man, and sometimes the artist will just play it on with their acoustic guitar, and then you hear it, and, you know, there might be a thing like, oh, we were thinking, you know, like a Faces thing here, or like this is more like a Beatles thing from Revolver, or like this is like Soundgarden, or, you know. And that's what's interesting about then how much exposure you've had to music, you know, and how big your ears are about, you know, if somebody says Billy Higgins, or you know, Earl Palmer, and they like these references musically, and with albums and styles and stuff, like, you know, that is a great thing. If they say, you know, like Hal Blaine with the Beach Boys, or, you know, and Phil Spector, and all those references, like that's really a critical, I think, can be a critical awareness for people that are working in the studios, you know, to have that kind of knowledge, you know, and be up to date with it, you know, to know what is happening. It's hard to stay on top of everything, you know.
No, but that, again, this is all great stuff for people to know and understand, that there's like, like you're to some degree, I don't want to say expected, but it's helpful to know the history of like where some songwriter might be influenced. So he's going to refer to, like you say, a Beach Boys tune and the way Hal played. I know like Max Weinberg talks about how um, in the olden days, like Springsteen didn't make a reference to like a Ronettes tune or something that Hal Blaine played on, like a boom, 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 zah, and Max, he got it. It's like, okay, yeah, you want that Hal Blaine lick, and yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah, that
it's
interesting how that is a part of the whole communication thing with a lot of people. And they respond to the idea that you might have the same reference points that they do. And if they
yeah,
feel like that maybe it's a blind spot, then it can be like, oh shit, maybe we hired the wrong cat, or that, like, that can start to happen.
yeah.
It's interesting.
So
Yeah.
so talking about the studio, Shawn, how much are you doing like that? I'm guessing that's where you record remotely,
Yeah, yeah.
your home studio.
This
Yeah,
is this thing here, and man, it's really involved in New York. Really evolved to where so many of the studios have just closed. Because of the changes
yeah,
in the whole streaming thing when that started, and the kind of collapse of the major label system in some ways. But then the home studio revolution happened, and I think a lot of people are doing a lot of work, a lot of great work, and it's I think it's really liberating and amazing to see, like say Billie Eilish to have all that success, and her and her brother have made that record in their bedroom, basically, and
yeah,
because when I moved to New York in the 80s, it was sort of like if something wasn't done at the Hit Factory or at Power Station, or, if it didn't have that sort of pedigree, it was almost like it wasn't going to be considered even anything more than a demo in a way. And
yeah,
so I think it's really amazing the tools that are out there, and like this is a floated room in Manhattan, and uh, and it doesn't have high ceilings. It's a post-war building, which means it doesn't have like a lot of cement between the floors, and it's not perfect, but as far as soundproofing, because it's so hard to get complete soundproofing, but man, it's amazing what you can get done in a closet these days if you
yeah,
sort of and you can insinuate a bigger space by using like convolution reverbs, and if you know how to sort of route your stuff into a room and then put some compression on it, and then if you route it to like a reverb of a castle, then all of a sudden it starts to sound like maybe what Zeppelin with a castle, I mean
yeah,
that's,
yeah. No,
but
but you get all of a sudden you get a big room sound. Yeah,
right, and you
yeah,
can be
yeah,
in a closet, and make this happen with the tools that we have. And so I mean, I've been lucky to have like world-class engineers that live here in New York, and they came over and helped me get up and running, and all the stuff. And I mean, there's been things that have been done at Avatar, Power Station, but it's now called Avatar.
yeah, yeah,
And they went in and did a record, and then they've decided, oh, we want to change this arrangement. We need to go back and recut this, but we don't have the money to go back into Avatar. And then so we've done the drums like here, and then with all the raw material and the tools that are available, you kind of can, in context, the track, you really can't tell what was cut at the $1 million studio versus in a home studio these days. If you
yeah,
have
yeah,
right people making it happen, with the tools and stuff. So
yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. Well, and I knew you had jumped on that, a long time ago, and I was curious to see sort of how that ratio looks nowadays in terms of like how much you're doing at home and how much you're doing in a place like Avatar or one of the major studios. So it's like I know in LA it's the same thing. It's mostly you're doing it in your own studio now. Sounds
Yeah,
like. Yeah,
it really is. Yeah. I'd say it's like shifted like 80-20, or
yeah.
90. It's been huge. Like that Aretha movie thing was done in the old Skyline space here in 38th Street in New York. And that was kind of during the COVID lockdown. So that was a trip, sort of recording um, during the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
They only allow a certain number of people kind of in the tracking space. And then this actual physical space is the Power Station or Avatar Studio A. And that's just one of the great rooms of the planet, and I think that space has been saved. Berkeley, I think, is a part of it now, and there was a guy that
Oh,
was financial guy. So they've kept the studio going, and maybe Berkeley is a part of it now. So I'm glad that it didn't get torn down, but
Yeah.
the real estate thing in New York has just gotten so crazy with, people building high rises and stuff. So all of the classic studios have almost disappeared, So
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
wah, wah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So, and so you mentioned moving to New York in the 80s, and when you got to town, did you do the sort of usual stuff, like you networked, you played with, played probably places, I don't know if the 55 bar was around at that time, it probably was, but you played with guys around town and you got your name out there and just kind of
Man,
kept at it.
I really pounded the streets, like when that John Eddie thing, we were on Columbia and then we got dropped, it got picked up on Elektra, and it was really interesting. Saw like 400K go into a record up at Dreamland Woodstock, and they had Neil Young's producer produced it. Anyway, long story short, that it was on Elektra, and then that we got dropped from that label. And so that thing kind of fell apart. It was also sort of a really slap in the face about the music business as far as the band journey of it, And so I started freelancing around and was playing a lot of blues gigs. This great band called the Fairlanes out in Jersey that a lot of great drummers have played with. And then the whole freelance thing here in New York, like at the Bitter End and on Bleecker Street, all the clubs on Bleecker Street. And I got to play with Joan Osborne back in that day before she got signed, or right at the cusp before getting signed, and a lot of it was a great time. And you could kind of freelance and work 4, 5, 6 nights a week, but there was all different stuff. And it was interesting, the singer-songwriter rotation thing at the Bitter End. I felt like I didn't necessarily come to New York to play singer-songwriter music somehow, but it ended up that way because it was a survival skill. That's where the gigs sort of were. And and it really honed in a certain sensitivity to and being around Kenny really learned this whole thing about, hearing a song and navigating, like, well, what's the feel and how are we going to approach this and what happens on the bridge? Are we changing anything or we're not? And, when like the colors that you have on the drum kit and when you choose to use the ride cymbal or you never do. And there's fills marking sections or there's no fills. And it's just very, like all the different things about approaching songs. And man, it was an incredible learning, in survival way. And there was a lot of work and stuff that you could do in New York at that time, and people's demos. And then that's sort of what led the word of mouth and freelancing thing is what led to that audition. I played at the Lone Star Roadhouse the night before GE called the bass player. I played with him at the Lone Star Roadhouse about the audition, So it was that whole networking thing that you're talking about. But man, I got to tell you, New York is, it's a hard mistress, man. New York is a motherfucker as far as surviving as a drummer, and moved out here with a small truck, a little like monster truck or something. And man, it got broken into so many times. And when I lived here in the early 90s before SNL happened, I had to take my drums up a three floor walk up on 14th Street. And this was during the crack epidemic, And man, they were selling crack and out of my door there, the apartment. But they didn't want to, actually, it's interesting because they don't want to cause trouble with the people that live there because that brings attention from the police,
Sure.
The police couldn't do anything because they had a whole thing there about they would never have enough drugs on them to get convicted. They stored it in different places on the street, So it was sort of this revolving door thing that never ended during the crack epidemic. And once somebody snuck in and took a poo-poo, in the lobby of the thing, and all sorts of shit that would go on in New York. But where I'm headed is that freelancing in New York, you either survive and it makes you strong. I love that about New York, that it constantly kicks your ass.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is something about New York drummers and the, just the crazy shit of dealing with this city, But man, it's a motherfucker, man. New York is, doing it and dealing with drums and having a car to drive your shit around with, and then having to park alternate side street, the parking, back and forth. And
I don't know how you do it. Really, I don't know how you do that.
Well, I mean, then I got so lucky and fortunate with the gig that, was so, but I guess I'm just saying that the music business is hard, anywhere, surviving year after year, decade after decade. In New York, it's an inspiring place to be, and to be able to walk and go see, Roy Haynes play at the Blue Note, or all the musicianship that's here, that's such on a high level. But man, as a drummer, the survival thing day to day is rough. It's rough.
It's rough. Yeah. Well, and the reason I asked you that is because, we met in '89, like we said, and I remember you working. I remember, like, we started a relationship at that point, and I'd hear from you, you might have cracked a cymbal or something, and, can I swap this out? And so I knew, like, you were working, and I knew a lot of guys, well, a handful of guys that were doing a similar thing, where, like you say, there were enough clubs going that you could work like 6 nights a week at a different place and a different gig. And
yeah,
it's hard work, though. Like you say, it's schlepping your gear, maybe on the subway or in a cab, or in your own car, parking, and long hours, and it doesn't always pay off. Like, like you say,
yeah, yeah, man. New York it'll make you strong, or kill you,
yeah,
or
yeah.
kill you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So when you so over time, you got to know a lot of people, you're on the show, but at the same time, you're getting called to do, like, big records, like Sean Colvin, Grammy Award winning records, and we mentioned Sheryl Crow. And did those come about as a result of, like, like working with certain producers that like to have you come in, or the artists themselves? I'm just curious. I think people would like to know that too, like how some of those big, like, sessions have sort of evolved.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, you were touching on it about just sort of the word of mouth networking thing that happens with musicians, and this was like pre, social media and YouTube. So it was really about
Yeah.
being present and hanging out, and trying to meet people, and sitting in and all that. And I had met John Leventhal, the producer of the Colvin stuff, through GE. And I think I'd played on a Brecker Brothers track, that kind of, the record did good on one of the tracks. And then I remember he was sort of taken by the range of somebody that could do a lot of different things. And so we had worked on a Patty Larkin record, I think, first, that and he kind of wanted something left field, kind of, Keltner influenced, and percussion with the drums and cool stuff. And I love Jim, huge influence and amazing musician. And that went great, and then that led sort of this Colvin record, which I think was 96 or 97, and that kind of was a breakthrough thing with Song of the Year and Record of the Year. That it was the year that Old Dirty Bastard ran out and interrupted their speech or something. It's funny, So, and once something like that kind of happens, the business sort of feeds on success, in that way. And Phil Ramone was involved in the Grammys that year, and I think he saw all that, and all of a sudden started working with Phil, a great producer.
Yeah.
And, so the other thing that was lucky is having SNL meant I wasn't on the road in and out of town a lot. I was sort of able to stay in town and set roots into the session scene, instead of, maybe getting a call and being on tour and not being able to do it. And so that was fortunate. And at that time, there was still the sort of day-to-day jingle and survival session scene world in New York was still sort of happening. I mean, it was a shell of what was happening when, like, Rick and Steve Gadd in the 70s and all that before, like that was like nonstop, those cats. But there was still some of that going on in the 90s with, records and the jingle industry and the song demos and all that stuff. And man, to show up at something, and I remember there was something for Texaco, and like there was Ron Carter, and then there's Lou Marini, and
Oh man.
The horn section from the Blues Brother movie, and and then Will Lee's on bass, and then it's like, it's like, wow, this is so, So when I started working in the studio, it just was like a dream come true, and when somebody shows me the list of the people that I just like, man, how did I end up working with Ray Charles? That's just so crazy, you know. But it was through Phil Ramone, you know, and like when these people, and then how it happens, and if you show up and do a good job, and you know, it leads to more work and stuff. So,
well, yeah, and but you have to have the goods to back it up, and you got the goods, brother. That's, you know, don't forget that part of it. You know, being, you know, you know what I'm saying. So
yeah, no, amen.
And everybody watching knows that, and yeah, no, I know. I think about what, I mean, what that scene was like and what it must have still been like in the 90s, like you say, when all those, there was still so much activity, like with sessions. And I remember Anton, you know, used to tell me that he was, you know, doing the show every day for Letterman. He was still able to do a lot of sessions and, you know, stay active doing that. And, you know, it was enough work out there. And
Yeah, it's interesting how things have changed, and then, you know, segued sort of into this home studio revolution, you know, and I think it's amazing that there is still a chance to make music and make records and record, you know. It's just sort of framed differently, you know, and then the budgets are completely different, and all of that. But the actual, you know, art of tracking and making music and making it happen, you know, the fact that it's still possible and we can still do it, it seems like a blessing, you know, in a way.
yeah, it's great. And so, and I'm guessing, you know, more to what you were saying too, as far as like the networking and the word of mouth, like you're like a regular fixture on Daryl's house. You know, I see you on there all the time, and that just came through. Had you worked with those guys with Hall and Oates?
Yeah, so that
And
happened when that first started. I guess I did the, you know, first group of seasons, I forget how many years, and that was through T-Bone Walk, who was the great bass player and producer and played with Hall and Oates forever, but he goes back with the SNL band in the 80s. Yep. And I've also known him because he was producing John Eddie's record back in, you know, that second record back when we first met. Wow. So anyway, there were, you know, those threads that run really deep, you know. And but man, now Brian Dunn plays on live from Daryl's house, and he's a great drummer, great feel, love him, and tours with Daryl and all of them. And anyway, it was interesting when that first started. Nobody really knew if it would get any traction or sort of just die on the vine, you know. But he's really turned it into a great thing, and it was, you know, amazing to. There's one episode we get to play with Todd Rundgren, and then Smokey Robinson. You know, and it was at the beginning of that, like filming people sort of doing something in a living room, and there's a lot of great moments I'm proud of on that.
Yeah, you got to be. You're right. I mean, it was really that was the beginning of that whole sort of concept that we all, you know, it's kind of almost like a common situation now, but that was revolutionary, really, and it was great. I mean, it still is great. I just remember, like, everywhere I looked, there you were. You know, you were like everywhere. That's great. That's great.
Knock on wood.
So what do you, so like right now, you know, you do you have some stuff lined up this week? There's another new show this Saturday, right?
Yeah. So we did a first little batch, and we just had a week break, and now we're going to do a group of 3. So we did one Saturday, we'll have 2 more, and then there's a Thanksgiving break. And then I think Lauren's getting the Kennedy Center honor, and they filmed that the first Saturday of December. Then we do 2 more shows leading up to Christmas, and then there's sort of a holiday break. And I think I'm going to play New Year's with Government Mule. We double drum with Matt Apps on that, and
great.
So I'm looking forward to that, New Year's Eve. And yeah, that double drum. You know, I had a blast doing those shows with Gadd. You know.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be able to play the video that you sent me, but I can post it later so people can see it.
Oh yeah, that's fun. Where it's sort of a little drum solo back and forth. Yeah, and that, you know, to trade drum solo type things with Steve Gadd is intimidating. You know, I gotta tell you, but boy, it's another, like, you know, drown or swim or die moment, you know. But man, I got to tell you, it's been 4 or 5 years doing these shows with him, and
Talking about Love Rocks. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and to sit beside a master like that and soak in his sound that he gets, how soulful he is, you know, his feel, his touch. We were doing something with Sarah Bareilles this last time, and Yola, who's this new artist, I guess from England, that has been winning a lot of awards, and it was a mashup of their versions of "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me," the Elton John ballad, and so and we're playing it together, and just the way Steve, his heart, and how soulful and how deep his pocket is, like these fills, like "Come down on me," and the just the sound and how deep the pocket is, and just how soulful the whole thing is, and it's just so inspiring, and playing things like shuffles with him, and just anything, just being around him, and and talk about like how someone handles situations, and big ears, listens, a lot, takes a lot in, really.
Well, that's why I was asking you that, Shawn. Honestly, you remind me a lot of how, from what I know, like Steve's approach is in terms of like how he reads the room. He goes in and he'll want to listen to the tune before he even really wants to play anything. He really wants to sort of, get a vibe for what it is. And your process reminds me a lot of it, and how it's the music is paramount. That's what you're going for. Like you said, I think you said it before we were live, but it's striving for tone,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, now he's such a, you're right. Music is it's all about making the music happen, whatever it takes. And it's interesting, like the two drum sets are sort of together. And I try to go back a little bit so that I can sort of see him without having to break my neck totally, 90 degrees. And then I remember the first year, when it was set up, but after the first year, he made an adjustment where he took some of his toms down, and then he put his music stand sort of on this side so that we could have eye contact and look, like very, like just very giving, very supportive, very whatever it's going to take to get to the best musical resolution of all the stuff, and like, if two drums don't work, I'll play tambourine or percussion, and then, he likes that sometimes we maybe chart out some drum fills together because they're so powerful when they're articulated by the same thing, and so it's just been such a blast working with him and being around him.
Well, I know he loves you. I know he digs you. We talk about you, and it's obvious because, for two drummers to play together, there's got to be that communication and that understanding and that respect, and both in both ways. So, and you have his respect, he has your respect, and that's why it works. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. I know, but
no, I appreciate it. No, you're absolutely right. And I guess I just feel like it's been this real gift, because as a drummer, you hardly ever get to sit side by side like a master drummer like him, and make music and see and feel. There's so much that, with drums, you can hear things on records, but when you see what's physically happening to make it happen, and the touch and the heart and the soul, so to do it 5 years in a row, I hope we keep doing it, but it feels like just a gift. Like, wow.
Wow. No, you're a gift. You're an inspiration, really. I've been telling you that a long time, but I appreciate your drumming even more and more now. Honestly, Shawn, I'm not saying that. I mean, as I've gotten older and just have really sort of re-examined how what's the most important part of, playing the drums is your whole, the way you operate it's like, that's where it's at, it's feel, it's sound. Yeah. It's the communication. It's everything. It's respecting the music. Never putting yourself ahead of the music, it's inspiring.
Oh man, thank you. Yeah. I like it. Straight ahead, striving for tone.
That's right. Striving for tone. I got to just say before we go too, I made a note of this because I've been wanting to like text you this every time I watch the end of the show, the SNL, the closing theme. And this is just my drum geekiness, but you play that so behind the beat, it kills me. I'm like at the edge of my seat listening to that, waiting for that backbeat.
Yeah.
And I just got to tell you that, man, I love that. You are my hero, because that is the greatest closing theme anyway. And then some nights I feel like you're just torturing us drummers. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
here it comes, zap.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, Leon Pendarvis recently the new guy's been playing piano on that, but for all those years, Leon set it up, and he has the kind of gospel piano thing happening. And I have a little mixer where I can kind of tweak what I'm hearing, and I always put him up so that I'm laying right with his piano, and where he's laying it. And so a lot of that is falling in with him and where he sets it. And yeah, that's a lot of fun. I tell you, by the time that comes around, we are kind of out of gas, from being there since 9 a.m. or something.
Yeah. Well, that explains. It's like Kenny Jones said last week when they would do these sessions in the middle of the night. Everybody's playing behind the beat, but that's maybe there's something to that. Yeah, it's
right.
But that's some masterful drumming right there, man. It's just like I think any drummer who's worth his salt needs to like just check that shit out only, and just get an idea of like where it's at. That's what I think anyway.
All right. Oh man, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, Shawn, this has been great, man. I'm gonna post. There's so much we could get into, like with your credits. I mean, they're just unbelievable. So I'm gonna post those to the YouTube and to the Facebook chat. A bunch of links to your Spotify credits and everything, just so people can. I think a lot of these people watching have a pretty good idea anyway. There's a lot of good drummers watching today. So
yeah. Well, man, it's such an honor. I really appreciate you, having me on. And I think you're a magical cat since I met at Zildjian. It's so interesting about just how you make everybody feel so cared for, and and your charisma level with all of that is just so great and inspiring to be around. There's been times where people have, because of the SNL thing, it's like, well, do you want to play this symbol? And I always think in my heart, like, well, I could never, because of the connection with John DeChristopher and how kind he was when we first met. I could never imagine sort of even though I know you're not a Zildjian anymore, but it's just like I feel some kind of way of like honoring how cool you always were. So
thank you. Wow,
yeah.
that's I don't know what to say. That's incredible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, but you have that making people feel cared about and everything. So thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Shawn. Thank you. This has been great. If you can hang with me for 1 second, I'll end the live stream, and then we'll just say our goodbyes in the waiting room there. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching. A big hand for Shawn Pelton. And like I said, I'm going to put some links up a little bit later on with a whole bunch of incredible work that Shawn's done and continues to do. And I do want to shout out to my buddy, my longtime friend and bandmate, Neil Porter, who I meant to say hello to earlier. So he's watching as well. So Neil, thanks for tuning in on your day off. So, all right, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you soon. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode. And again, thanks to Shawn Pelton.
Right. Thank you.
All right, cool. I think we're out. Thank you so much. This was so great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And man, John, thank you. And man, keep me posted. I thought that Charlie Watts